Hey everyone. It's been a while since I've stuck anything on YouTube, but I guess I'm back for a little bit anyway. Someone on the Savage Core Facebook group was asking for some basic tutorials, and I didn't have anything at the time. I said I would do some painting, and now that the Temple of the Golden Heart Savage Core expansion came out, I've got a big pile of metal, and need to start painting it. So I figured I would record a good chunk of it at any rate. Um, this first video is going to be basic prep work, everything we need to do before we get primer on the models. I'm also going to try and do this with a very limited tool set that you can get anywhere from Home Depot or some mom and pop uh, hardware store, or an art store, or your local, hobby store. So first things first, we've got a fat-handled X-Acto blade. I'll be using this for scraping. Specifically, I'll be using the backside of the blade. You could use a scalpel handle, but I find when you pull the scalpel this way, the blade sometimes wants to pop out. So I just use this thick-handled X-Acto blade. I think I got this from Michael's for $2 or $3. You'll also want clippers. These ones are side cutters. I got these from an electronics shop. I think they're less than $10. You do not want to use your super expensive Tamiya's or God Hands or Mr. Hobby clippers. You will ruin them pretty instantly trying to clip the metal that Lucid Eye casts these minis with. I also need a pair of pliers, just because one of the tabs here was bent, and I need to straighten it out before we glue it down. You also need something to sand with. This came from a pharmacy. It's like a fingernail emery board. I got a pack of like 1,000 or 500 of these for $10. You've got sandpaper from the auto body shop or a woodworking store, that also works. You'll need glue. I use Bob Smith Industries cyanoacrylate. This is the super thick stuff. It's what I have. You can get extra thin, gap filling, metal infused, all sorts of stuff. You can use Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue or any other super glue. And then you will also need the bases. These are the ones that come with the figures provided by Lucid Eye. I don't like these. I use these. What's the name of this company? Renedra. Is that how you pronounce that? Renedra. That's not going to focus. Anyway, these are just polystyrene 1mm thick discs. I use those. There is the version, it's gray. I believe this one is a Warlord Games variant. I'm pretty sure Renedra makes that as well. A few years ago, I laser cut my own, so I've got thousands of these homemade Renedra style bases, because that was easy for me at the time. So you'll need your bases. For priming, we will need something to stick all the minis to, I've got a big chunk of wood. This one is probably 1.5 by 3/4 inch, or I guess what, 1/2 inch by 2 inch stock, and it's probably 2 feet long. I got a few of those that I just putty all the minis to and spray them with primer. Poster tack. Get this at Staples or anywhere that sells poster supplies. The cheaper the better, because you will get primer all over it. And then the last thing is primer. I live in Canada, so depending on the weather, my primer choices sort of vary. Right now it's early spring, there's still snow on the ground, it's raining. Most lacquer primers are not super friendly with that. I tend to use automotive body primers from Duplicolor. I find in this weather, this Krylon primer works pretty well. It's middle gray. I think actually it's the same as Vallejo's dark sea blue, or I can't remember the name of it, but this is a color match for one of the more popular Vallejo grays. Yeah, and it works pretty well in this weather. And it's a lacquer. It is not going to chip very easily. Okay, that's everything you need. Let's actually look at one of these models or minis and figure out what we need to do. Start with this guy. No, we won't. We will start with one that's got some flash all over him. We'll start with this guy. So we've got a few remnants from the casting process that we need to cut off. We've got some, might not be able to see this, but let's see what we can do here. We've got some other just flash that needs to come off. There's probably going to be a mold line or two that we'll need to get sorted. Let's see some of these other ones. This one here, you can see there's this chunk from the casting gate, so that needs to get clipped off and sanded down. You can also see that it's quite bent. That probably happened when they took the mini off of the thing, off like the casting gate, and just sort of pulled it. Probably was more thick than they thought it might be, and it just bent right there. It's a 2-second fix with pair of pliers. And this model's actually pretty clean. A little bit of either some sort of air hole to get the metal to come through, or just flash. Let's see here. This needs to get straightened a bit. It's a bit bent in a way that it probably wouldn't be if it was a real thing. And then see if we can, as I wiggle this around and try and catch the light, I'm hoping you'll be able to see so you can kind of, there we go. This is a mold line and needs to come off, in theory. So that's that. So we'll start dealing with that. One thing to note, this group of minis here, these are in this specific game. these are sort of random encounters that pop up. They've got a low probability of showing up on the gaming table, so because I'm using these as gaming pieces, I want them painted quicker than I care about surface prep. So I'm going to do a quick cleanup job on these. If I was displaying these or doing like competitive painting, I'd probably spend quite a bit longer on prep work. I'm going to get rid of all the really ugly mold lines because they're ugly mold lines. But if it's not super noticeable, then I probably will leave it at that. The shields, again, they've just got little remnants of flash or like little air vents that were cut into the rubber mold so that the metal could spin out more easily. Again, this thing's bent. Cool. Let's start shaving some things down. First, what we're going to do is remove any of the flash bits. So we'll start by just getting in there, chopping that down. I'm going to put my finger on top of this so that it doesn't go flying away. So I'm doing this in my living room. I'm pretty sure my partner would kill me if she stepped on a small chunk of metal. So that's that. And then again, I'm just sort of trying to figure out how rough this is with just poking at it with my finger. There is air vents on this one, so we will remove those. And that's just snip there, snip there. And we'll come back in with the X-Acto knife and clean it up a little bit better. This one is pretty good. I'm just piling up the ones that are done. We'll just clip these like little air vent holes. That's what I'm going to call them from now on so that I'm not prattling on too much. And then again, that one. Sorry about that. So that's that. Next is one of these adventuring types, and feels there's not much flash. Same with this guy. I guess I can somewhat review these as I'm doing this as well. These are fantastic, by the way. Not Tarzan's lady friend. She's got like this weird hand position, and I think this is one part of something she's holding, but also a little bit of a like an air vent. So I'm just gonna cut it down a little bit, and then with the file, I'll sort of just round it over so it looks more like like she's got her hand kind of like that. Okay, so he's got this big giant sort of gate from the casting process at the bottom, which we'll just do that. Now, because these are like the cutting blade is on this side, not up here. So kind of let's see how it's like that when you do this and then do this, provided you're not like really pushing your finger all the way down there, like if you're just using your finger to cover this channel, you're not going to cut yourself or clip yourself. That's fine. Sorry for the shakiness. Like I said, I'm on a table in my living room. It's just a coffee table or one of those fold-out TV tables. Right here you can see there's like this sort of, right, that just comes off. Everyone's minis are going to be slightly different just based on how casting works. Here we've just got this guy looks pretty clean. Grab this one. Okay, so got some, again, air holes, air vents cut into the metal or into the rubber. Just clip. You could probably actually pull it off with your yeah, it comes off with your, just by hand. And that's fine. Next up, last guy. He's just got a casting air vent right there. Again, that. There it goes. His staff's got quite the bend in it. We'll straighten that out, no problem. The shields. We'll clip off these air vent holes. A lot of the times these things will just fall off in the bag that they pack all this stuff in. There, so that's no longer need that tool. I'm going to rifle through here for this guy who's got the bent thing. Take my pliers and then just straighten that out. That thing no longer need pliers. Might as well deal with all the bottoms, these bases. What I'm going to do is just put this emery board right directly on. You could use sandpaper, would probably work better. I just don't feel like rummaging around for it. But I'm just going to leave this right on the base. These are mostly good enough for gluing down, but I just want to knock down some of the rough bits. And we're just going to quickly, do that. Put it on flat surface. And if it wobbles too much, then like you just sort of wiggle it back and forth, and you'll figure out if it like will want to glue down or not. This is not precision. I'd actually just do this. We're just, so right here you can kind of see there's like this little bit of, this was probably where it was attached to the the pour spout, and it's not super flat. It's probably good enough, but I want it to be a little bit smoother than that, so you just sort of done. This doesn't, we're just trying to create enough of a flat that the super glue will take real quick. That. Perfect. This is kind of tedious work, so the best way to do this is to put on some music or put on a movie or TV show or podcast, maybe an audiobook. But that's the last there. So that's that tool done. And I keep all my sanding sticks and sanding paper. The smoother they get, the better they are. They basically turn into very high grit sandpaper, which is perfect for when you need to polish stuff or just need higher grit sanding sticks or paper. Okay, so now we're going to deal with the seam lines. What we're going to do is take your backside of your knife blade. There are specific tools for this. Games Workshop makes a seam scraper. It's just I think it's like an 1/8 of an inch thick steel stuck between like some plastic handle bits, and it does the exact same thing as this, only you're not going to cut yourself on this side if you use that one. I find knife works well because I can do this, but if I need to be more aggressive with it, I can flip it over and scrape with a much sharper edge. I'm not going to do this for everything. I'm just sort of looking for obvious seam lines. And we'll see if I can show this off in the sort of easiest way to see some of these seam lines is to have a light source. Like if you put one right here and have it shine sideways across your work surface, what you can do is rotate your mini in all sorts of weird angles, and at some point the light coming this way will catch along the mold line, and you'll see it very distinctly. I just saw a little air hole in there, and we'll just scrape that off with our fingernail. Carry on. We're also probably not going to see very many mold lines through this feather bit, just because it's textured. And that'll just, that texture will hide those mold lines. It's just this side of the shield is pretty smooth. And I have a feeling what they did was this is stamped all the way in one side of the mold, and then just this top texture is on the other side of the mold. So the mold line is probably actually like on this sort of top corner edge versus like going right through the center of this. I can't see a mold line, but I know right here is, I can feel that this was where it was attached to the sort of center chunk of metal, and it goes all the way into the center, but it's not a big deal. These shields, they've got no texture on the back really. There's like some scratched in wood grain, but also that's kind of the same texture that vulcanized rubber has. So I have a feeling that these were also cast sort of a similar way. And this side's not super important. I'm not going to bother sanding that or scraping that one or this one. I can't see any serious defects. Once we get some primer on there, if the paint looks, or if the mold lines pop out, then they look real terrible, I'll scrape them off and reprime them. Okay, so we will do these encounter figures next, and we'll save the Maxzans for last. So we've got Tarzan and, or I guess not Tarzan, Crom, and her, I can't remember her name. And then we've got the two explorers, and we got this sweet little monkey dude who will probably become my favorite because I really like the simians. I'm taking extra care on this little orb thing because it will look cool in metallic paints. You're probably never going to find the mold line through here until you get primer on it. I've sort of already looked through a lot of these minis when they first showed up. I think the only spots you're going to find the mold lines are probably on the scepter, maybe the crown, but anyway, I'm just going to do that, do that. The other way to sort of track down mold lines is to look at bottom of the base. So like, for instance, this one, you can kind of see this line right there. That means, right, if the line comes up here, you can kind of figure out where the mold lines are. We will a little bit of a there. That's that. Next, interestingly enough, looking at these minis through my phone screen kind of helps me see the mold lines a bit easier. Probably due to the fact that colors on my screen are probably not super accurate. Yeah, so we'll just knock back any potential mold lines. What's that? This dude. This dude's got some mold lines under his legs. There's also, kind of see like this little air vent that we missed when I was previous stage, so I'll just get that done, then carry on scraping. Now on these guys with these pants, you can kind of get away with those mold lines if you dress them up as like, oh, that's the seam in this chap's pant leg. Oh, and then actually we've got a whole bunch of extra metal right there, which I wasn't paying attention to. But we'll get these guys back. Just clip some of that out. Sometimes this material's pretty thin. This is just flash from where a little bit of metal got through the mold. We'll just cut it out. That's that. Hopefully I don't gouge my thumb on camera. This actually requires a little bit more work because now we've made this stupid looking chunk of metal that we need to clean up, but also trying not to cut his nose off by accident. So that's just a little bit of extra elbow grease to get some of that out of there. That's probably going to be good enough. Again, this guy's not going to get on the board very regularly because he's a special encounter. Okay. This is... I'm just looking this little magazine here. Lelia the Orphan. She's pretty clean. We'll just... I know for sure we'll get like a really dumb looking seam on this once we get primer on there, so I'm just gonna preemptively scrape the whole thing down. Now because she's doing the whole Raquel Welch Amazonian bikini thing, she's got a lot of exposed skin, so does Crom, and we want to make sure that the mold lines are gone there because otherwise it'll look real silly. So we'll just scrape that down a little bit extra. And then one thing that happened to this figure, I'm not sure if this is like this in all the casting or if this was part of how it was sculpted. She's got an air pocket for a plumber's butt, so we will have to fill that in. I'm just gonna hope that the primer covers over that. If not, we'll drop a little bit of thin crazy glue down there and that'll solve that. It's not a big enough hole that we need to get putty or Bondo or anything like that. Little dot of crazy glue will solve that. So we'll just carry on. And I'm just rotating it every which way to try and catch mold lines in the light. I've got a lamp that way that is providing like some good side light for seeing some of these mold lines. And again, this mini is not wearing much clothing, just loincloth and some armlets. I guess he's got some boots on as well. So I'm just going a little bit extra on his rib cage because I don't want mold lines there. So that's that. Okay, on to the Maxzans. So we'll start with the boss. This mini's got a load of detail in it. I think this is my new favorite mini that Steve sculpted. I guess I missed a air vent there. Whatever, we'll scrap that off. All this detail, all this feather texture, and all this like I don't know, maybe Mesoamerican, Inca, Mayan aesthetic. All this texture is going to hide mold lines. Some of them might pop out when we get primer on there. Hopefully not, because doing cleanup after primer is always boring, but it's just part of the process. Again, I've looked at these minis already and sort of really tried finding these seam lines. I think they will turn out pretty okay once we get some primer on there. I suspect some of the older models in the range might have some tougher seam lines now that, you know, those molds have probably been used a fair bit, unless they've remade those molds. There's that one. Now we're on to just the individual troops. Looks like there's two chappies with this ball and spiky thing. And the rest have these, this thing. Okay, so let's... And then this guy's got a little bit of an air pocket for a plumber's crack. That won't take very long to fix with just a bit of crazy glue. That's what this stuff's really good for, filling small holes. It's thick. Just a little dot on the end of a needle to get in there. So I think that was one of, oh, this guy here. This guy here has a little bit of an air pocket in his neck. I don't think you'll ever see it, but the primer doesn't fill it in, and we'll just drop some super glue in there. that'll solve that problem. There is a little air vent there. So just scrape off. Again, I'm going to pay extra attention around this ball. The seam line will show up. Now, the way I've got this held, you probably can't see it, but I can see a seam line right through here. That's all it takes to get rid of that seam line in this metal. What's that? I believe Lucid Eye are using same casters. They're based in the same building that a lot of the sort of real popular Footsore UK and a bunch of those popular indie designers or publishers, producers. I wouldn't be surprised if they utilize the same machines, and also like between the few of them in that building, bulk order metal together. That's what I would do. This stuff can get expensive when you have to order it in bulk. Okay. Again, we're just going to scrape down this. Scratch off this little vent. Scrape off that vent. Scrape down knuckles because that's where that vent was. I don't care about these vents in the base. That's all going to get covered in the terrain stuff. Mould line on his foot that I can see. I know will annoy me, so I'm going to scrape that off. So this just gets a quick once over. Sometimes you won't see some of these tiny little air vents. It's an easy way to deal with trying to find them is to just rub your finger over everything. And if you're rubbing your finger over a smooth surface and all of a sudden you feel like a different sort of unexpected texture, you know where to look for remnants of the casting process. That down. This leg down. Finding mold lines in resin is a little bit easier just because the resin isn't shiny, or same with plastic, like the polystyrene that GW uses, or even the garbage plastic that all the Kickstarter board games use. You can see the mold lines quite a bit better than on the shininess of the metal kind of obfuscates some of that. But that is that done. This can go away. That can go away. And then we are going to make sure all these things are straight, and then glue everything down. This, already done. That guy, don't have to worry about bent things. This guy is, scepter is done. Her gun is, it kind of looks bent on camera, but I think that's just the light. It is not bent in real life. His rifle is straight. Okay. Cal Welsh has a wobbly staff, so we will just straighten that out. Most of these weapons, because the metal's so thin, these things bend pretty easily. This guy that's probably real difficult to see because of all the metal behind him, but his staff's a little bit bent, so we're just gonna grab it and bend it back a little. Now, this guy, whatever this mallet thing is, looks pretty straight to me, so we'll skip that. This dude, it's a little bent. So all I'm doing is putting my thumb at the base and then just sort of rolling the end into shape. Because this is thin, it's pretty malleable, but if you bend it too far or in a way that it doesn't want to bend, it's pretty easy to snap. I haven't snapped any of the Lucid Eye stuff. I just saw thing there, so I'll just take that off. But yes, these types of pieces are somewhat easy to snap off sometimes. So you just want to make sure that you can kind of feel it as you're bending these. Like these all just want to go, no problem. It will have resistance if it doesn't want to bend in the direction you want to bend it in. So you sometimes you might have to like unwrap it in like a weird sort of way before you can get it to fall straight. This guy's kind of needs to come up this way, but also in a few spots. So we'll bend it back here and then also sort of in the middle to get it nice and straight. And then this thing again is really not straight, so we'll pull it forward. I think there's a little bit of flash on his. Then I'll just scrape off with my thumb, pull it forward. This part is connected to his hand and also his foot. It's kind of warped in the center, so not a whole lot we can do with it, but that looks straight enough. Okay, so let's get these on some bases. One thing that I will do after I get primer on this is stick some magnetic stickers to the bottoms of these. I store these in a toolbox, and they stick to that nicely. So okay, so we'll do that. I do not glue these to the minis until they've been painted. Let's see if this glue actually comes out. If not, we might have to get a knife. If your glue tip is all jammed up, you can just stick a knife down there, or a pin to try and clean that out. I tend to stick pins down. This might be a little bit. Okay. We're gonna double part this video so that I can go clean out my crazy glue. Back in a second. Okay, I'm back. I lied. I'm just grabbing the super thin stuff. That's just as good. So all I'm gonna do is drop. That's that. And then all we're gonna do is take our chappies, I like to position these guys so that their heads are sort of over the center of the mini, or of the base. I think that for my needs gives me the sort of the coolest looking positioning, which, let's face it, that's the most important part, is these things looking cool on a table. This glue doesn't take very long to dry. It is 1 to 3 seconds once it starts bonding. We'll leave these here for, I'll go have dinner and come back after that. So that's that. By then they'll be rock hard. I do find the Bob Smith Industries glue, if you let these sit for a few days, trying to separate the base and the metal suddenly becomes a very difficult task. So if you are looking for really good super glue, I'm quite happy with the BSI glues. Okay, so that's that. They're glued down. Next up, we'll be getting these on a stick of wood to hit them with primer. These are the magnet stickers, sticky back bases. They're crazy thin. They're from Litco. So this is 1 mil thick. That's sort of how thick, but half as thick, I guess. Maybe 1/4 mil thick. These come from Litco. It's $13 for 100 of them, I think. It's sticky on this side. And we just plunk. And we've got a magnetic base, and it holds pretty good. Works for me. Okay, so I'm going to let these cure up, and we will be back to prime everything. I'm going to do the priming outside, so this video configuration will just be of my backyard, and we will do some spray priming. I'm going to upload this part first, I think, and get the... It's a bit dark now, so priming in the dark will be frustrating for people to watch. So we'll do that first thing in the morning, right before I go to work. And then hopefully tomorrow night we should start getting some paint on some of these guys. Matthew, I hope this helps you out with your first chunk of minis. If you have any questions or specific things you want to see, let me know, and I'll be sure to cover over those. Otherwise, I'm going to try and be super detailed. We'll do some dry brushing on the monkey. We're going to do a lot of metallics on the Maxzan because they're covered in gold bling. We're going to do a bunch of different skin tones. The two jungle, Crom and Laelia. We're going to give them some decent tan skin. These like Euro adventurers will do fairly white, and then these Maxzan chappies will probably do a reasonably dark skin color, but we'll get there. Lots of different techniques to go over. We'll see you next time, hopefully pretty soon. Okay, peace out.